Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom, welcome back to today's Daf, Pesachim, Daf Chav Ches. We are at the 2 lines, around 10 lines from the top of the Amud. Chachamim Aimrim, Mefarer Vezur L'Ruach Uyimata L'Yam. Rabbi Yehuda holds the only way to do Bir Chametz is by burning the Chametz. Chachamim hold, you can get rid of your Chametz using any manner which you see fit. For instance, Mefarer, you could crumble it, Vezur L'Ruach, and disperse it up in the wind, Uyimata L'Yam, or drop it into a body of water. Iboilus, they ask the following question. Hechek Amar, what does the Mishnah mean? Mefarer Vezur L'Ruach, you crumble the chametz and then toss it up into the wind. Umefarer Umata L'Yam, and likewise when you are dropping into a yam, into a body of water, you first have to crumble the chametz. So that nobody finds the chametz, nobody eats the chametz. So first you have to crumble and then drop it into the yam. That's one option. Oi, Dilma, or perhaps Mefarer Vezur L'Ruach. Yeah, when you are dispersing it up in the wind, you have to be mefarer first, so nobody finds your chametz. Aval matal liyam be'enei, but if you're dropping it into the yam, you just toss it in as is, the chametz intact, and assume and hope that it's going to dissolve before somebody finds it. Let's take a look at Rashi. Rashi here is 22 lines from the bottom of the Amud. Beginning with the words oidilma. Says Rashi, oidilma, or perhaps l'ruach with the boy pirur. When he's spreading it out in the ruach, you need to have pirur or shema yizrakenu shalim. Perhaps I'll toss it up intact. Somebody will find and eat it. Aval yam. But if he decides to drop it into the yam, there's no concern. Matal be'enei. He just leaves it as is. Drops the bread into the water. The meimis v'nimuk me'elav. Let's assume it's going to dissolve on its own, and there's no concern of somebody finding it. Continues the Gemara. The same question we have about Avodah Zarah. We have a Mishnah which says, Rabbi Yehuda Kessler, what does one do? How does one dispose of Avodah Zarah? Speaking about, for instance, metal, a metal Avodah Zarah. Sheichek v'zor l'ruach. He needs to first grind it up, then toss it up into the wind. Oy matal yam, or drop it into the yam. V'boilu. The Bnei Yeshiva applied the same question. Hechik Amar, what does he mean? Sheichek v'zor l'ruach. When he's being zor l'ruach, yeah, he has to first grind it up. V'sheichek u'matal yam, likewise, when he's dropping it into a body of water, you first grind it and then drop it in. Oy dilma, or perhaps it's not necessary. Sheichek v'zor l'ruach. Yeah, when he's using the wind option, you first have to grind it up. Aval matal yam be'enei, but if he's dropping it into the water, be'enei can just do it intact, leave it intact, drop it in as is. So the same question applied to chametz was applied to Avodah Zarah. Omar Rabba Mistavra, it is logical, Avodah Zarah, Del Yam HaMelech Ka'azla. When we're speaking about dropping the Avodah Zarah into a body of water, we're speaking about Yam HaMelech, where there is no traffic there. It's meant to be lost forever. That's where you're meant to drop it in. So in that case, there's no need to grind it up because there's no sea traffic and nobody will find it in any case. However, chametz l'lisharna aris kahazal. When it comes to chametz which can be dropped into any river, but you pure, then it needs to be ground up so that the boats, the sea traffic doesn't encounter your chametz and comes to consume it. So according to Rabbah, when it comes to chametz by shar naharos, you have to go ahead and mefarer the chametz prior to disposing of it and tossing it into the body of water. Just the opposite. Logic indicates just the opposite, in the reverse. Avodah Zarah delay misa. When it comes to Avodah Zarah, which is, let's say, something metallic, it's not going to dissolve on its own. Boyishchika, yeah, it needs to be ground up so nobody finds it. Chametz the meimis, loy boyipir. In contrast to chametz, which at any rate is going to dissolve and melt up, it's not going to be found, and therefore pirur is not required. So according to Rabbah, you need to grind up the chametz prior to throwing into the water, whereas according to Rabbi Yosef, that applies to Avodah Zarah. Tani kavasei the Rabbah, we have a right to Rabbah that chametz needs to be ground up, needs to be crumbled up prior to being dropped into the water. Tani kavasei Rabbi Yosef. Likewise, you have a brisa that's supposed to Rabbi Yosef, that Avodah Zarah needs to be ground up prior to being dropped into the body of water. Tanaka was the Rabba. We have a right to Rabba. If one was traveling in a desert, he crumbles up the chametz and disperses it in the wind. If he was traveling at sea, he was in a boat, then prior to dropping into the yam, he needs to be mefarer, to grind up the chametz. There's a right to Rabba. The chametz needs to be ground up prior to disposal. Tanaka Vasi to Rav Yosef. We have a raya to Rav Yosef from a brisa that Avodah Zarah needs to be ground up prior to disposal, prior to being dropped into a body of water. If he was traveling in a desert, so he grinds up the Avodah Zarah prior to dispersing it in the wind. If he was traveling on a boat, he grinds it up prior to dropping it into the water. So it's the right of Yosef that prior to disposing of Avodah Zarah, even in a body of water, you need to grind it up. Says the Gemara, okay, but shchika kashi l'Rabba. This brisa, which indicates that you need to first grind up the Avodah Zarah, is a kasha to Rabba, who doesn't seem to require that. Pure kashi l'Rav Yosef. Likewise, the brisa which supported Rabba, the brisa which said that the chametz needs to be ground up prior to disposing of it and dropping it into a body of water, is a kasha to Rav Yosef, who doesn't need the pure prior to dropping into the water. Answers the Gemara, shchika l'Rabba l'kasha. The brisa which says that the Avodah Zarah needs to be ground up prior to being dropped into the body of water is not a kasha on Rabba. You know why? It depends into which body of water he's dropping it in. Holy Yam HaMelech. When Rabba said that Avodah Zarah does not need to be ground up, he was speaking specifically about Yam HaMelech, which is a place where nobody's going to reach and arrive at and retrieve Avodah Zarah in any case. All the Shar Naharos, whereas the brisa which required shchika was speaking about other bodies of water, in which case there's some sea traffic which might encounter and retrieve the Avodah Zarah. So we're speaking about different types of scenarios. Yam HaMelech doesn't need shchika, but Shar Naharos do. Pirur l'Rav Yosef l'kasha. Likewise, the brisa which said that even chametz needs to be ground up, needs to be dispersed prior to being dropped into a body of water. It won't be a kasha on Rav Yosef who said that chametz doesn't need to have that process. Depends what type of chametz. Ha bechiti. The brisa which requires dispersal is speaking about chiti, a bag of a wheat. You can't just throw it in intact. You have to first disperse the wheat so that nobody will retrieve it. Ha benahama. Whereas Rav Yosef, who said that chametz doesn't need to be ground up, was speaking about a loaf of bread, which at any case is going to dissolve in the body of water, in which case nobody will retrieve it in any case. So in summary, according to the way Tosfos presents our sugya, this is the shitas that we discussed. When you take the Avodah Zarah or the chametz, and you are zera l'ruach, you toss it up into the wind, so all agree, you need to grind it up. Avodah Zarah needs shchika, to grind up the metal. Chametz needs to be mefarer, you have to go and crumble up the chametz. Because when you're just tossing it into the wind, somebody might just come along and retrieve the Avodah Zarah or the chametz. However, when he's being matel layam, he's dropping it into a body of water, then it depends. When it comes to Avodah Zarah, so we just concluded, if it is Shar Naharis, other bodies of water, unlike the Yam HaMelech, other bodies of water which have sea traffic, and there's a concern about retrieval, then he has to first be sheichik. The Avodah Zarah prior to dropping into the body of water. When it comes to the Yam HaMelech, there's no concern of retrieval, just drop it in as is. When it comes to chametz, we have a discussion. So if it's chitin, all agree you have to first disperse the chitin so that it's not retrieved. When it comes to a loaf of bread, for instance, we have machlekes Rabbi and Rav Yosef. Rabbi says, first be mefarer the bread to ensure that nobody retrieves it. According to Rav Yosef, there's no concern because true, at this moment it's still intact. Well, let's assume sooner or later it's going to dissolve, and by merely tossing it into the body of water, he has to use makayim as mitzvah bir chametz tashpisu. There's no real concern of retrieval because sooner or later it's going to dissolve, and nobody will find it. And certainly all agree, if he takes his chametz and chooses to drop it into the Yam HaMelech, where nobody is around, the chametz can just be dropped in intact, and he's makayim his mitzvah in that manner. Continues the Mishnah. Chametz shall nachrish over al Pesach. So after Pesach, you have chametz which belong to a goy on Pesach. So there's no isser, there's no avera committed. Mutabano, you can go ahead and derive benefit from this chametz. However, v'shal Yisrael asabano, If this chametz after Pesach belonged to a Yisrael on Pesach, in which case there was a Isser done, then midrabanan, there's a knas, Rashi says, we may not use this chametz. Shenemar lo yirah l'chasar, because of this Isser lo yirah l'chasar, which Yisrael was over by keeping the chametz around on Pesach. So as a result of that, the Chacham applied a penalty. You can't have hana from this chametz. Says the Gemara, Mani Masnisen, whose shita is reflected in our Mishnah? Lo Rabbi Yehuda, not Rabbi Yehuda's shita, v'lo Rabbi Shimon, nor Rabbi Shimon, v'lo Rabbi Saglili, nor Rabbi Saglili, as we're going to see soon in the Brisa. Mahi, where do we find these three shitas? The Sanya, chametz, bein lifnei zmanei, whether before the actual zman, before the Yom Tov of Pesach, meaning on Erev Pesach, from Chatzos onward, bein la'achar zmanei, whether after Pesach, over olav belav, eating that chametz entails a lav. So from Chatzos until the actual Yom Tov, there's a lav for eating chametz. Likewise, chametz, which is present after Pesach. Of course, it was around on Pesach. So now after Pesach, there's a lav. Toich zmana, the actual Yom Tov of Pesach, over olav belav, the kuris, that involves lav and kuris, divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Let's see Rashi, 3 lines from the bottom. Bein lifnei zmanoi, this is referring to Mishei Shois Ashetechshach, from the 6th hour until nightfall. So that's a lav. And also la'achar zmanei, Mishei over Pesach, over olav belav. V'im achlei eina nish kuris, there's no kuris involved. We'll come on Farsh lav. Very soon we're going to see which lav is applied to these two periods, before and after Pesach. Toich zmanei, meaning b'moed on Yom Tov itself. Not only is there a lav, there is kuris as well. So this is Shita Rabbi Yehuda. From Chatzos until Pesach there's a lav. On Pesach there's lav b'kuris. After Pesach, merely a lav. Rabbi Shimon Omer, no. Chametz lefnei zmanoi, ula'achar zmanoi. Chametz before or after Pesach, einoi over lav leklum. There's actually no lav at all. However, on Pesach itself, over lav b'kuris u'b'lav, that involves kuris and lav. So Shita Rav Shimon is only on Pesach itself is there a lav, is there kuris, but before or after Pesach there isn't even a lav. Continues the Brisa, from the very point where there's an Isra Achila applied, the Isra Hana applies as well. And whose shita is this? Ason l'Tanakama. This is in line with shita of the Tanakama, who in this case happens to be Rabbi Yehuda. He's the one that holds that the Isra Achila and Hana begin together in tandem from the point of Chatzos on Erev Pesach onward. So we have Rabbi Yehuda's shita, we have Rabbi Shimon. Now comes Rabbi Yehuda Kessler. Tom al atzmacha. One may wonder, Heich chametz asa b'hana kol shiva. From where do we know that even on Pesach, on the 7 days of Pesach, there's Isra Hana? In fact, Rabbi Yehuda holds that there isn't even an Isra Hana on Pesach itself. So we have Rabbi Shimon, we have Rabbi Saglili, and Rabbi Yehuda. Continues the Gemara. Let's go back to Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that from Chatzos until Pesach there's a lav. Umenayin lo ichol chametz mishei shos olamala shu over b'leisasei. From where do we know that if one eats chametz from Chatzos onward on Erev Pesach, that involves a lav? Shenamar lo yisoichal olav chametz. You shouldn't eat chametz on it, on the Korban Pesach. From the time of the Hakrava onward, there's an isser of eating chametz, the Rabbi Yehuda. So that begins from Chatzos. So this is Rabbi Yehuda's makar, that there's isser lav for achilas chametz from Chatzos Erev Pesach. Amalei Rabbi Shimon, how can you say that? Can you suggest that the isser of chametz begins from Chatzos, and the isser of chametz is connected, is synonymous with the zman of the akrava, of the shechita of the Korban Pesach? Doesn't the pasuk say that very same pasuk that you began to quote continues and says like this? First, lo yisachel olav chametz, right? And then continues shivas yomim toichel olav matzis, which indicates that the isser chametz is synonymous with the mitzvah of achilas matzah, which only begins from nighttime. Im keimat hamaloyma lo yisachel olav chametz. So what then does the pasuk mean? Lo yisachel olav chametz. It's not a reference to the zman of shchitas haPesach, which is from Chatzos. Rather, lo yisachel olav chametz means don't eat chametz together with the achilas Korban Pesach, which begins at night. B'shah sheyeshnoi bekum echol matzah. From the very moment where there is a mitzvah, go eat matzah. Yeshnoi b'toichel chametz. Likewise, there's an issur about toichel chametz. U'b'shah she'ena bekum echol matzah. However, at the point in time where there is not yet a mitzvah to eat matzah, namely on Erev Pesach, surely there's no isser of eating chametz. So Rabbi Yehuda learned from this pasuk that the isser chametz begins from the zman shchitas Pesach. Rabbi Shimon counters and says no. The pasuk itself indicates that chametz and matzah go hand in hand. That only begins from nightfall. So apparently, lo yiseichel olav chametz is not a reference to the zman shchitas Pesach. Rather, the zman achilas Pesach, which certainly only begins at nightfall. My time with Rabbi Yehuda. Indeed, what is the basis for Rabbi Yehuda's chiddush that there's an isser from Chatzos till Pesach belav, there's an isser after Pesach, which is another lav, and on Pesach lav and kares. Tlosa krei ksivi, because there are 3 psukim which discuss the isser of achilas chametz. Lo yechel chametz. Chametz may not be eaten. That's speaking about. That can be applied to the period after Pesach. V'chol machmetzes lo yisachelu. You're not meant to eat any sort of chametz. That can be applied to Pesach itself. And finally, Seichel Olav Chametz, which was the pasuk we just discussed, which is in reference to the period of before Pesach, on Erev Pesach itself. Indeed, Chad Lefnei Zmani, one before Pesach, V'chad La'achar Zmani, one will be applied to the period of post-Pesach, V'chad La'tzorech Zmani, one for Pesach itself. So going to Rabbi Yehuda, 3 psukim, which will be applied to the 3 periods, before, during, and after Pesach. Rabbi Shimon, what does he do with the 3 psukim? He holds that there's no Isser before and after. Certainly one pasuk is in reference to Pesach itself. The pasuk V'chol machmetzes, that's not available, that's needed for another halacha. Look at the Sanya, Ainli Eloshin is chametz me'elav. So we would only assume that chametz, which was self chametz, it was made into chametz using dough, sourdough, which is the same variety, the same type, like the dough itself. What if you used an ingredient which is different? Machmas davar achar menai. Let's say the dough became chametz using a davar achar, a different type of ingredient. Taisa says, for instance, the shimra yain, the wine sediment, which would be dried up and be used as a leavening agent. So that's a non-dough agent. How do you know that there as well the isur chametz applies? Nachmas davar achar menai. Tamad lo yimar kol machmetzes leisachelu. This pasuk is coming to add all types of machmetzes, even if it became chametz through a davar achar. So this pasuk is applied for this halacha. And finally, the pasuk of lo yachal chametz mibayla, that's needed for the other thing. Look at the Sanya, basically the Omer. Minayin lePesach Mitzrayim she'en chimutzoy noyeg el yom echad. How do we know that in Mitzrayim they would refrain from chametz only that first day? There was no isur chametz throughout 7 days. Talmud lo yimar lo yachal chametz. That's one pasuk. And the very next pasuk says, "V'samach lei." Right next to it, the pasuk says, "Hayoyim atem yotzim." Today, you're going to leave Mitzrayim. So we make that connection, and the pasuk lo yachal is hayoyim. Is coming to teach us that the Isser in Mitzrayim only applied today, that first day of Pesach. So bottom line is we have 3 psukim, but 2 are needed for other things. One is to teach us Neschametz Davar Achar, and one to teach us that in Mitzrayim they would only have the refraining the Isser of Chametz only for that one day, leaving us with just one pasuk, which certainly will be applied for Pesach itself. That is Shittas Rabbi Shimon. Says the Gemara, but Rabbi Yehuda, who applied these 3 psukim for the Isser Chametz, one before, one during, one after Pesach, how is he going to learn these other things? There's no pasuk available for that. Rabbi Yehuda machmas davar achar menali. How does he know that if it became Chametz using a different type of agent, Shimra Yain, for instance, that's also considered proper Chametz? Since the pasuk chose to employ a term of machmetzes, which is a unique term, so the pasuk itself is coming to teach us the Isra Achilas Chametz during one of those 3 periods that Rabbi Yehuda applied it to. But the fact that the Torah chose to use this unique term machmetzes, that in itself is a ribui, and will come to teach us that a chametz which came about through davar achar is also considered chametz. Now, what about the other thing? Rabbi Yisrael Glili Minoli. How does Rabbi Yehuda know that in Mitzrayim they would only observe the Isra Chametz for 1 day? The pasuk Lo Yochel Chametz is unavailable. It's not free because it was already used to teach us the Isra Chametz after Pesach. According to Rabbi Yehuda. So how does he know? One shot would be since there's a smichas, the pasuk joined the words Hayoyim Atem Yotzim, to the words Le'ochel Chametz. It's a pasuk right next to the other. So the pasuk itself, Le'ochel Chametz, is coming to teach us Isra Achilas Chametz after Pesach. But the very fact that the Torah joins these two psukim together, they're neighbors, Le'ochel Chametz, and then comes Hayoy, that in itself is a riboy. That's a limud that in Mitzrayim they don't have chametz for one day. Iboy Sema, alternatively, you're right, smuchen le'dorish. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't expound on the concept of smuchen. The fact that a pasuk is next to the other, that doesn't really teach us much. Rashi brings except in Dvarim, that has a different status. But otherwise, here we're speaking about Shmais, so you're right. He doesn't apply this concept of smuchen, and he doesn't know that in Mitzrayim they would have chametz only one day. Perhaps they refrain from chametz throughout the entire 7 days of Pesach. So in conclusion, Rabbi Yehuda says we have 3 psukim. One before, one during, one after Pesach. Rabbi Shimon says we only have 1 pasuk available, because the other 2 have been applied to teach us other things. Amar Mar. So we just learned u'menayin lo'ichol chametz mishay shos alamala sho'eva b'loisase. This is Rabbi Yehuda speaking. From where do we know that if one eats chametz from chatzos on Erev Pesach up until nightfall, there's a loisase shenemar loiseichel olav chametz divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, this pasuk is a reference to the chametz being connected with the shchitas Pesach. From that point onward, there's an issur chametz. Amar Rabbi Shimon v'chi efshar le'meken. So we discussed this earlier, right? The whole back and forth. How can you say that the pasuk here is in reference to Erev Pesach, there's man shchitas Pesach? But like for Nema, the pasuk itself says, Lo yiseichel olav chametz, right? But then continues, Shivas yamim teichel olav matzis. Which indicates that the Isra of chametz is synonymous with the Zman of matzah, which is only from the Seder onward, from the night of Pesach onward. How can you say there's an Isra chametz on Erev Pesach? So Reb Shimon seemed to have responded very clearly and strongly. The pasuk itself indicates that it's not referring to Erev Pesach. Why then would the Torah connect chametz to matzah? Says of Rabbi Yehuda. So what's Rabbi Yehuda going to do? Shapir ka'amalei Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon responded correctly. It seems that it's a pretty strong objection and pretty correct. Why is the pasuk connecting chametz to matzah? Rabbi Yehuda Amalach. Rabbi Yehuda will respond. You know where the Torah connects the two? Nothing to do with Reb Shimon's limud. Rather, coming to teach us another chiddush. Hahu lekoivay chayva. The pasuk here is not coming to indicate that the zman of chametz is connected to the zman of matzah. If anything, just the opposite. The Torah is trying to connect the mitzvah, the obligation of matzah with the isra of chametz. What are we learning from here? It's coming to teach us that even b'zman hazeh, where we don't have a korban pesach, perhaps I would think there's a pasuk which says al matzah u'merodim yichluhu. The korban pesach is meant to be eaten together with matzah mar. So perhaps when there's no korban pesach, like nowadays, perhaps there's a p'tur on matzah. The Torah here is trying to establish it as a chayva, as an obligation. Afilu b'zman hazeh. Even nowadays. So that's why the pasuk connects matzah to chametz. Just as chametz certainly applies nowadays as well. Matzah would be applied even today when there's no korban pesach. So Rabbi Yehuda maintains that the initial part of the pasuk, like seichel olav chametz, is in reference to the zman shchitas pesach from chatzos onward. Why then does the Torah connect matzah to chametz to teach us that even b'zman hazeh there's a mitzvah and a chayva of achilas matzah? Let's see Rashi inside, which comes out around 16 lines from the top of the Amid. Beginning with the words l'koivay chayva. So this is Rabbi Yehuda speaking. He says like this: Hay shivas yom teichel matzah. It's lovely kushi. Isur chametz l'mitzvah achilas matzah also. The Torah is actually not trying to connect chametz to matzah and say, well, the isur chametz only begins at the time of the mitzvah matzah, which is at night. No. Ella la kusha achilas matzah la haras chametz. Actually, just the opposite. Torah is connecting the achilas matzah to the isur chametz. What for? L'kboya achilas matzah chayv l'doros. To establish the mitzvah, the chayv of eating matzah l'doros for generations and generations. Calls man shu muzal chametz. As long as a person is warned, is usher to eat chametz, afil b'zman shein pesach, even when there's no pesach. You meant to eat matzah as well. Why would I think otherwise? Loi tema Al matzos u'meror mechluksiv. Don't think, well, the Torah says the Korban Pesach is meant to be eaten in tandem with matzah merorim. So perhaps ikum Pesach mechay b'chilas matzah. If there's a Pesach here, then you chayav matzah. V'loy, but otherwise not. Comes the Torah and says, no, it's true. It's very special to have your matzah with your Korban Pesach. But even when there's no Pesach, such as Bizman Hazeh, there will be a mitzvah of matzah, a chayva of matzah, just as it's chametz Bizman Hazeh. That's not negotiable. So matzah as well will apply Bizman Hazeh. Continues the Gemara. Okay, so according to Rabbi Shimon, how do we know this concept that Bizman Hazeh there's a chiyuv of matzah? Because he already used up that pasuk for his connection that Isur Chametz is synonymous with matzah, so he has no pasuk free to teach us the mitzvahs matzah Bizman Hazeh. So how does he know it? Nafkalei be'erev techlu matzahs. He learns it from the other pasuk be'erev techlu matzahs, which Rashi says is an extra pasuk, because the pasuk already says al matzahs u'meror mechlu. They went to eat the matzah and the maror together with the Pesach. Why does the pasuk repeat be'erev techlu matzahs? That's meant to be applied even by Bizman Hazeh when there's no Pesach available. Rabbi Yehuda, what did Rabbi Yehuda do with this pasuk, which seems to be a free and available pasuk? He needs it to apply it to another halach. The tamei v'shahiv derech hachayka. Person was tamei and unfit to bring the Pesach, or he was derech hachayka. He was on a journey. He was far away. He was at a distance from the harabayis during this Zman Shchitas Pesach. So both these fellows, tamei and derech hachayka, are exempt from Pesach Rishon. They have to bring a Pesach Sheni, but they're not chayiv in Pesach Rishon. And the pasuk is coming to tell us like this: perhaps I would say, since he's not eating the Pesach, matzah maror nami lenechel. Likewise, when it comes to matzah maror, they have no chiv to eat it because Pesach matzah maror, one bundle, one package deal. Kamash malon. That's why the pasuk says be'erev techlu matzos. It's coming to include even these individuals who are pater from Korban Pesach, but they should still go ahead, sit down and have their matzah. So sure, it's an extra pasuk, but we have an address for it, for the tamei and derech hachayka to obligate them in matzah. Reb Shimon, tamei v'shayiv derech hachayka. How does he know that these fellows need to eat matzah? Well, yes, we don't need a pasuk for them. You know why? Because the Torah already told us elsewhere, in a similar context, a person who doesn't bring his Pesach still needs to have matzah. So he says like this: we don't need a pasuk for tamei and derech hachayka. The loigora ma'oral u'beneicher. They're no different, no worse than the oral. Rashi says this is a person who, Rachmana litzlan, his brothers, who meisu machmas mila. They died through the mila experience, so we're concerned that perhaps it's a family weakness. So this person is exempt from the mila, but he's still called the oral to a certain extent that he cannot partake in the Korban Pesach. U'beneicher, a person who is a habitual transgressor, he's a meshumad, he's a mumar. These two fellows don't eat the Korban Pesach. And still, the Torah says, they have to eat matzah. How do we know? The oral cannot partake in the Korban Pesach. Boy is an extra word. Boy who ain't oichel, he doesn't eat the Pesach, but he's meant to eat matzah and mar. And we have a similar pasuk by Ben Nechar, exempting him from Pesach, but he's still chayv matzah and mar. Says Reb Shimon, once we know these fellows need to eat matzah and mar, the tamei and derech hachayka are no worse. And certainly the chiyuv of matzah applies to them as well. We don't need a pasuk of be'erev techlu matzos to include the tamei. Rabbi Yehuda. Now, how does Rabbi Yehuda respond? Why does Rabbi Yehuda need a pasuk of be'erev techlu matzos for the tamei, the chayka? Since we already know this concept from the oral and the beneicher, although they don't eat the pesach, they'll eat the matzah. Ksiv b'hai. You're right. There's a pasuk by these and a pasuk by these, and there's a girsa utzrichi. And they're both needed. As a Rashbam later on in the Masechta explains that why they both needed. Because perhaps there would be room to say that all the Urel and Ben Neichar, although they are exempt from Pesach, they have to have the matzah, but perhaps this won't apply to the Tamei and the fellow who's B'derech Ruchayka. Why? Because they are pater from Pesach Rishon, but still have to come back and do Pesach Sheni. So perhaps let them wait until Pesach Sheni when they'll have the whole bundle, the Pesach, the matzah, mar together. Who says they have to go and eat matzah already during the time of the first Pesach? And that's why we need an extra pasuk, be'erev techel matzahs, to come say that these fellows, Tamei derech hachayka, they as well need to go ahead and have their matzah during the first Pesach. Let's see Rashi inside. So Rashi here is about 22 lines from the bottom. Rashi begins, Ksiv Bahai. So this is the last words of the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda says, well, we have a pasuk by these and a pasuk by these. Ksiv Bahai, Orul Benecha. So we have a pasuk there. Uksiv Tamei V'shayu Derech HaChayk. The Leichel Matzahs. We have a pasuk by Tamei and Derech HaChayk as well. They have to eat matzah. V'afagav the matzah yolaf minei. Although the Tamei and Derech HaChayk can learn from the Orul, we still have a pasuk. And as Rashbam explained, that actually perhaps there would be room to differentiate between one and the other. So we have a pasuk by both. Hilkach itzrich hakeshel kavechayva. So since we have the pasuk of erev teichel matzis apply to the tummy and derech chayka, so it's unavailable. That's why we need the other pasuk, the pasuk which connects the chametz and the matzah, right? The pasuk that says leisechel of chametz shivas yom teichel of matzis. That pasuk, according to Rabbi Yehuda, what was available, right, was free, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda says it's coming to teach us bizman hazeh, although we have no Pesach, l'koyvei chayva, it's meant to teach us that there's a chiyuv of matzah even now. Now Rashi, interesting kasha. Rashi says, Mikroy Achrin Tuva. What about other psukim? We have many other psukim which discuss achilas matzah. Why doesn't the Gemara mention it? Mikroy Achrin Tuva could go in shivas yom matzah techelu, could go in matzah yochel shivas hayomim, lo nafka le kvius chayva. One doesn't mention that, meaning Rabbi Yehuda cannot go ahead and learn Kviyus Chayva, that Bizman Hazeh, there's a Chiv of Matzah, even though there's no Pesach. He can't learn it from those other psukim. Why? The Hanu life Chayvaninu. He meant to know, says Rashi, that all those psukim, they're not indicative of obligation, not obligatory psukim. They're not telling you have to eat matzah. Ela matzah she'achal lo chametz. The pasuk says, matzah she'achal, shivas hayamim. Doesn't mean to say we have to eat matzah throughout Pesach. No. It means to say that if you have a choice between chametz and matzah, you better eat your matzah, not chametz. But if you want to eat none of the above, then matzah lizen shaloim chametz, shaloim matzah. If he wants to satiate himself from something which is neither matzah or chametz, or just biyada, he certainly is a free man to do so. V'teida, I'll bring you a raya, says Rashi. De'abakulu ksiv eshivas hayamim. Because in all these psukim, the other psukim, for instance, the ones that Rashi mentioned, Shivas Yomim, Matzah Techelu, Matzah Yochel, Shivas Yomim, if you pay attention, the pasuk is referencing all 7 days. And we know that when it comes to Chiv, there's certainly no Chiv throughout the entire Pesach. V'chayves Matzah Eina Ela Laila Rishon, Yafin Perak Basra. And the last parak in the Masechta, the Gemara is going to teach us that certainly the Chiv of Matzah only applies the first night. So when these psukim reference these 7 days in the context of achilas matzah, evidently we're not speaking about the chiyuv of matzah, because there's no chiyuv past the first night. Rather, the pasuk is simply saying, look, make sure you eat matzah instead of chametz. But if you eat neither that nor that, that's fine. Therefore, says Rashi, any of those psukim would not have taught us the concept of chayva, bizman hazeh, and that's why it wasn't employed in our Gemara. Okay, so conclusion. We discussed two shitas, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, and many halachas. And let's see how each one learns the halachas. So we have Koidim Zmanai, we have Teich Zmanai, La'achar Zmanai, meaning the period before Pesach, from Chatzos until nightfall. We have the actual Yom Tov Pesach itself. We have Chametz, which was left over after Pesach. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Koidim Zmanai, La'achar Zmanai, involve a lav. And during Zmanai, there's a lav and chorus. We have 3 psukim. Leisechel of chametz is a reference to Erev Pesach, from the Zman of Shchitas of Pesach onward. That's in reference to Kodim Zmanai. Teich Zmanai is derived from Kolach Metzah Sechelu. Lachar Zmanai, we have another lav, Le'ochel chametz. How do we know that chametz, which became chametz through a davar achar, for instance through the shimmer yayin, the wine sediment? That's because the pasuk chooses the lashon of machmetzes. That indicates that any type of chametz, however it came about, has the status of chametz. How do we know that Pesach Mitzrayim was only conducted for 1 day? Le'achal chametz hayoyim atam yotzim chodesh Aviv indicates that the Isra chametz was only that very day. Actually, there's another version of the Gemara that, according to Rabbi Yehuda, he doesn't apply this concept of joint psukim of smuchin, in which case, perhaps even in Mitzrayim, they refrain from chametz throughout 7 days. How do we know that Bizman Hazeh, even when there's no Pesach, there is still a Chiyuv of Matzah? That's because the Pasuk connects Matzah to Chametz. Lo Yiseichel of Chametz, and then says Shivas Yomim Teichel of Matzah, which indicates that even Bizman Hazeh, that all we have is the Isser Chametz, the Chiyuv Matzah is connected, is related to Isser Chametz, and just as we don't eat Chametz, we eat Matzah. How do we know that the Tamei and the Churchaika, although they're exempt from Pesach, they'll still have a Chiyuv Matzah, Be'erev Teichel Matzahs? How do you know that Earl ben Necher, although they don't bring a Pesach, they still eat matzah? But it says boy, lo yechal boy, they don't eat the carbon, but they still have a chiyuv of matzah. Now according to Reb Shimon, Kodim Zmanoid, there's actually no issur whatsoever. This is only Toich Zmani on Pesach itself, lo yiseichel of Chametz, which is a reference to the Zman Achilas Pesach, which is from nightfall onward. La'achar Zmani, there's no issur as well. How does he know that Chametz machmas davar achar is considered Chametz? Kol machmetz lo yiseichelu. How do you know that in Mitzrayim there was a Yisro Chametz only for one day? Le'echel Chametz, and then it says Hayayim. How do we know that Bizman Hazeh is a Chayva, Be'erev Teichel Matzahs? And how do we know that the Tamei B'derech Chayka will eat matzah? So he says because they're no different than the Earl ben Necher, which we learn from the pasuk of Boy, which indicates that only Pesach they're exempt from, but matzah mer they'll eat. Likewise, the Tamei B'derech Chayka, although there's no carbon Pesach, but matzah will still apply. Okay, time for a brief chazar of today's daf. We began with a discussion of how to invar chametz. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you burn it. According to Rabbanan, do anything. You could just crumble it up, toss it up into the wind, into the ruach, or be matal hayam. The Gemara concluded that we have a similar concept of avodah zarah, and the conclusion is like this: whether avodah zarah or chametz, which he's trying to dispose of, if he chooses to be zera l'ruach, toss it up into the wind, in both cases he has to make sure nobody finds it, nobody retrieves it. Grind up the avodah zarah, which is asur b'hana. Grind up your chametz, which is asur b'hana. When it comes to being matal yam, that depends. If it's in Yam HaMelach, there's no concern, nobody's going to retrieve it in any case, just throw it in as is. However, when we're speaking about other bodies of water, Sha'an Haris, then avodah zarah certainly has to grind up. It's not going to dissolve on its own. When it comes to chametz, we have a discussion. Chitim, so it's a bag of wheat, of course, he has to go ahead and disperse it. All agree. When it comes to a piece of chametz, like a loaf of bread, then according to Rava, you just make sure that nobody finds it, crumble it up prior to tossing it into the body of water. According to Rabbi Yosef, rest assured that sooner or later it's going to dissolve, in which case we're not concerned any longer about retrieval, just toss it in, and there's no concern. We learned in the Mishnah that chametz which belonged to Yisrael, in which case he was over on Liro l'chasor, the Chacham applied a knas, that's called chametz l'achar Pesach, that's asur b'hana. And we proceeded with a brisa, where we had three shittas, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yossi, and we discussed the psukim, and how each one applies this psukim in accordance with his shita.